I'm curious too, we're talking about, high caliber and high quality, and we're being in my 30s, most of the listeners being in their 30s. At this point in time, we're looking for long-term fits, hopefully, right? Not just short-term relationships. So I'm curious, where do you think that most women and men, all of us, are perhaps going wrong, like when we get to the date? Are we asking the wrong questions and not vetting our, dates as thoroughly as maybe we should? How can we do a better job at assessing for that long-term compatibility from the get-go so that we're seeing more success and, spending our time on the right people?
Yeah, so I feel like it's simply hard to tell what someone, because I get this a lot too when people are like on a dating app. They're like, how can I tell someone's intention? Well, if you met someone in person, you probably wouldn't know their intention right away.
Yeah.
So it might take a couple dates to uncover that. And I actually encourage people to not ask kind of the typical questions on the first date, but instead to share stories, like ask them different questions than they're used to getting, because it's going to create a different dating experience for them and you both. That being said, though, if you realize like, oh, I do like this person after a few dates, right? Being fairly upfront with like what you're looking for and, with releasing the pressure of whatever that other person says. So this is something that I recommend to clients is prepare yourself mentally and actually journal on like their possible responses. So, for example, one of my clients was dating someone and she wasn't sure if he wanted kids or not. And she was like, I don't think I want kids, but I just want to make sure like what he is looking for. And I was like, okay, what are his potential responses? He could say like, absolutely not. I hate kids. Like I would never want kids. He could be like, I want kids tomorrow. Or he could be somewhere in between, right? And so just like getting ahead of mentally whatever you are going to bring up or whatever you are going to share can be really helpful, because then it doesn't come as much of a shock. You're like, okay, my mind is already kind of prepared for this. It might not be the answer I want to hear, but at least I know now. And I can make my decision from there, whether I want to continue or, let them go.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. So taking that pressure off and not making it necessarily such an interrogation at the very beginning, but then once you have a better sense of how you're feeling, feel free to ask the pointed questions, because you're dating to find your person just as much as they are. So kind of, again, going back to that, like, do I even like them type of thing? If you're going to continue investing your time and seeing this person, you need to know, are we on the same page about these things? Are we not? Is this an ongoing conversation? Is it a line drawn in the sand? But you think bearing on that gut instinct on like when the timing feels right to be able to ask.
Yeah, I feel like, generally by 4 or 5 dates, you kind of know what direction you're going in, or, it's probably ended by then if it's not going somewhere. But
probably,
you never know. But I think always being direct in a lighthearted way is always better than like if you're feeling unsure or you're feeling self-conscious is the wrong word, but you're like, there's something here I want to clarify. Being direct and upfront in a light, playful way, like I feel like especially for people that are like confident human beings, or they are the high caliber type where they're like, they have a lot going on for them. They appreciate people that are direct and that are upfront, right? And so bringing that up, like a really simple way to do this is just be like, hey, I really enjoyed spending time together. Like, where are you at? And then just letting them talk. And like, there might be an awkward pause, right? But like allowing yourself to just sit in it and just like look at them. And like, you can even have some like playfulness with it, right? It's better than wasting's the wrong word, but like spending your time with someone where it's like 7 months in, you find out, oh, they actually never wanted kids, or like, oh, they never want a relationship with me, or whatever it may be,
No, I agree completely. So as a second layer to this question, you mentioned the example of children. I'm curious if you, from your experience, feel as though there are either certain categories or opinions that are essential to long-term compatibility, like having, agreements on, or if you think that we as a society kind of put more weight into those things. Like, I'm thinking of, the first that come to mind are like the typical, like your political views, your religion, children, do you want to get married? We put a lot of weight into we have to be both Democrats or we have to be both Republicans. And, I want to be, I want to raise my kids Jewish, I'm Catholic, whatever. Do you think that those are the pillars that we should be assessing, or do you think that we should be looking in other areas instead?
I think the number one area is how that person makes you feel, which sounds like so simple and so basic, but I think often we're trying to assess people on like their job, like what political beliefs they have. When at the end of the day, like if that person makes you feel appreciative and supported and like loved and all these different things, those things kind of fade away and they can be your own things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree on everything if you're in a relationship. I think it's kind of strange if you do. But that being said, there are core things that aren't going to change, right? If your partner doesn't want kids, you do want kids. It's just not compatible, right?
Right.
And, certain things that could change, like someone's job or where, you're living, just getting really, really clear on what's important to you and are you okay with that other person, like having a different opinion for it? There's just so many examples of like people having polar opposite, not for kids, obviously, because you need to be hopefully on board with that, but like certain things, like I feel like politics is the biggest one.
Yeah.
When, in reality, like I'm thinking personally of my dad and like his girlfriend and like they're polar opposites, but they just like simply do their own thing when it comes to that, right? And so I think being aware, like, but some people, if you're going to be talking about it all day, every day, maybe that is important.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it really comes down to like being aware of how you feel with that person, but also how you feel when you're apart from them. Sometimes it feels really, really great when you're together, but then when you're apart, everyone's anxious or like you're not communicative. Communication is big too there. Like when, I call it like a freak out moment, like your first freak out when you're dating someone, like maybe you get an argument or maybe like there's a miscommunication, right? And you have this, I personally, freak out moment. And I like to see how the other person responds because you get to know like a lot about who they are as a person by how you fight and also how you communicate as well, just day to day. So I feel like those are really the core things. And then, just seeing if those other things like really, really matter.
Yeah.
Or you can be independent.
Took it right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say. Like, I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this when people listen to it, but like, I think like if we have difference in political views, that's not a deal breaker for me. If like I know who you are as a person and I know your heart and you vote one way and I vote the other, I think there's room to agree to disagree. What I care about more is like, how do you fight? Are you the type of person that needs to like scream and yell? Do you walk away? Because I think that to me is more important because I know that like where I feel safe and secure is when somebody wants to like hear me out and talk it through with me without raising their voice, but without walking away. If you're a person that's like, I always need to cool off, that for me is a little like, don't leave me, like, hold on, let's just make this go away and get rid of it, right? So like, I want to know how somebody fights because to me, that's going to tell me a lot about how we would, be in a relationship. Not right now on this one date, but like down the road because that's where my mind is at, I'm thinking long term.
I think too, like odds are the person you're dating is probably going to have a different communication style than you, and that's okay.
Yes.
In form of like text message, even like down to like, do they use exclamation points? Do they not? But communication, like for example, I am the same way with you where if I'm in a fight, I'm a lot of fire. I'm like, I need to fix this right away. Like I want to take action right away. My boyfriend is the opposite. He needs space to process, and that scares the shit out of me, or it did. Like now I'm aware of it, but I think especially early on, if they're not communicating like, hey, I'm not leaving. Like I just need a bit of space. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to like go in the other room for a second. Let's talk once I have time to process. Like there's a bit of learning there too.
Right.
So I think communicating if there is a bit of difference in style, like what you're feeling when they do that. So, because sometimes people, they're not aware, right? Especially if they have a different style, can be really important. And it's kind of this learning journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I could not agree more. Okay. I think that is all of my specific questions, because I want you guys to go take the accelerator course. I want you guys to go on the website, listen to the podcast. So that's all you're getting teased with today. However, before I let you go, I am going to ask you one more general question. I am curious, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone who is feeling frustrated with dating, or for somebody who's, been single for a while? What is your go-to when you're like hoping to kind of give them some words of encouragement?
So one of my favorite exercises to do is to connect to the future version of myself that is already in the relationship I want to be in, and then reverse engineer how I got there. So you could do this in two ways. Like, I really like visualization. You could close your eyes, visualize yourself, right? Like, what is she wearing? What is she feeling? What's her partner like, right? And like visualize it. Or you could literally write a letter to yourself from like 1 year in the future, looking back on today, being like, all right,
Wow.
all right, Michelle, like, I know you're feeling this way right now, but let me tell you what happens in the next year. Let me tell you what happens in the next 3 months. And then I feel like that's the most powerful way, is because like, you know yourself better than anyone, right? Or that like, it's good to listen to advice and things like that, but like, like when you look inside of yourself. So doing that exercise, it can be very powerful, because then you can start thinking like, okay, what did I need to shift here? Like, what did I shift, right?
Yeah.
What habits, or what did I prioritize more? And start thinking about that, because everyone will have like a different way they got there, but it can be a powerful exercise to do.
I love that. You are a girl after my own heart. Like the journaling, you're kind of putting it out into the universe, speaking into existence. You're all about energy. Me and you, this is not the end. I know it.